The country laughs as Democratic debates descend into a clown festival. America is left in shock and grief in the aftermath of three mass shootings. And later, how the end of the world became part of pop culture. All this and more on Planet Now.
Oh, dude. How's it going, bro?
Really good, dude. It's so amazing. I freaking
Hell
love
yeah,
fun.
man.
What are we doing?
What do you think, man? Should we do this?
Man, I'm telling you, the world is not flat. Just saying.
Are you sure about that, though? The world isn't flat, bro. I mean,
I'm pretty sure about that.
there is people that are
I see that, but you know what else I'm sure about?
What?
I'm pretty sure this is an awesome song. This is some good shit right here for our thing.
I know, right?
Should we get into it?
Let's do it.
So, a lot to get to today. Wayne will not be joining us on this episode. He is busy with some other stuff this weekend, so he won't be here today. So, I want to start with the Democratic debates, the second round of debates for 20 candidates. Pretty much the entire country at this point is laughing. And it's not just people who are politically against the Democratic Party. It's even their own party is laughing at this point. People like Stephen Colbert, who is well known to be fairly left-leaning, something of a progressive, in favor of most Democratic policies, and no fan of the current administration. Even he had a lot of ridicule and had a good time, I would say, making fun of pretty much the entire crowd, especially the ones who got the most attention. He made fun of Joe Biden quite a bit, which is not surprising. So, if any of you haven't seen the debates, Joe Biden apparently mixed up his website with a text messaging address, a text messaging number. So, apparently at the time, he got confused about the difference between a text message and a website, which does not look great for him and also does not put him in any sort of common ground with the current generation, with modern society. It makes him look pretty bad. It makes him look like he needs to get out of the house and pay attention to the changes that are going on in the world. So when people say that he sounds old and tired, they're right. He kind of does, especially in that one case. Kamala Harris got beat over the head pretty hard. And for all she did well in her first night of debates, on the second round, she did not do near as well. A lot of policy questions came up for her. And the truth is, she just didn't have any good answers. She didn't have anything good to say about what she wants to do in America. No real plan, no real policy, no real physical method of implementing these policies that she is promoting in a real world. So it didn't look great for her either. I think Bernie Sanders probably did a lot better in this debate than we were expecting, maybe better than any of the other candidates who were the front runners. And it was pretty funny. There was a couple of funny moments with Bernie when, I don't even know who it was, one of the other candidates told him to throw his arms in the air, and he did. He just threw his arms up. He's like, okay. Threw his arms up in the air, and You gotta laugh because, I mean, it's such a Bernie Sanders move. Throw your arms up in the air. Anyway, so, yeah, it kind of went the same route that they did last debate, which was kind of a clown festival. I guess it's what we were expecting. And it was kind of fun. There was a lot of fun times, fun moments. Interestingly enough, though, Tulsi Gabbard was the most searched name on Google the night after the debates. Again, for the second time. Which is very interesting, and honestly, in my opinion, a much more accurate poll of who people are watching and paying attention to than the polls that are taken by MSNBC and CNN and these other groups, because they're not getting a very big group of people. They're not polling a very big group of people. Those polls don't reach enough people to make them very accurate. So having a Google search statistic that puts Tulsi at the top, way more people have access to Google than are ever going to go and vote in these polls. So I think that, in my personal opinion, it's a way more accurate description of who people are paying attention to and who they like. And I'm not surprised. From what we've seen, Tulsi is the most reasonable. She has the most moderate view in the Democratic Party at the moment. She has the most reasonable view, and she appeals to a lot of centrist voters, a lot of people who are on the fence about which side they want to take in the partisan warfare that goes on. People like me who don't give a shit about party politics. We don't care if you're a Republican, we don't care if you're a Democrat. As long as you do what we want, as long as you do what's good for the country and you have some common sense and decency, then that's what we want to see. That's who we vote for. Excuse me. So, Tulsi Gabbard is getting a lot of attention. She's still behind in the polls quite a bit compared to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. And then another thing that was really fun that happened in the debates is Marianne Williamson. Now, I just want to say, Marianne Williamson is awesome. She's amazing. I love everything about her. I love her whole spiritual Zen vibe she's got going on. It's awesome. But maybe not the best place for it. Maybe not something you want to bring up like she does on the stage in those debates. So, but it was fun. It's fun, and I like it. It's so much fun to watch that. So it's good. It's good. It's like entertaining sometimes when it's not boring, which it quite often is. Boring most of the time, and then there's a few good moments. So, yeah, it kind of turned into a clown fest, just like the last one, which is pretty much what everyone expected. And not a lot changed. Same kind of questions were coming up: gun control, healthcare, Bernie Sanders going on and on about healthcare for all, praising Canada, talking about how Canada's healthcare system is just so amazing and everyone there is given free healthcare, which is partly true, but there are reasons that it's not done in America. In my personal opinion, a better way to look at healthcare would be to have a public option, like all states do, like even the federal government has, and then allow private insurance, because there's a lot of people, millions of people, with private health insurance who are really happy with it. So forcing everyone to adopt a public option is not the answer. That is communism, and this country will never, ever be a socialist country. America is not a socialist republic. It never will be a socialist republic. And this is another thing that's really kind of put a lot of people off about Bernie Sanders, is he calls himself a democratic socialist, which super off-putting for a couple of reasons. There's something that a lot of people don't understand about America. A lot of Americans don't understand about this country. And that is that, and this might surprise you, but America is not a democracy. It never has been, and it never will be. Now, that might surprise a lot of people, but a democracy is a country ruled by the people. There are democracies in this world. There are democracies where the people literally make all the choices. Switzerland, great example of a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a democratic republic. Now, a republic is a nation ruled by representatives of the people. Most countries in the world today are republics. Now, when it comes to the reason that America is a republic, there's a really good reason for it, and it makes total sense. In the Declaration of Independence, it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And the thing that happens in a democracy, the danger with a democracy, is that the majority always chooses. The majority always wins. The majority says something, it happens. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, the truths that we hold self-evident are, and I quote, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the danger with a democracy is that there are always minorities. There's always a majority, there's always a minority. 51% is a majority. If 51% of the people say, take rights away from this group of people or that group of people, then it happens. So, the purpose of the republic is to protect the rights of the individual, the rights of life, liberty, and happiness, to protect those rights from the majority when the majority goes against those rights, which does happen. There's a reason we had slavery. There's a reason we have, to this day, have a problem in some parts of the country with segregation based on color or race or sex or religion or whatever it is. So, the purpose of the republic is to protect the rights of the individual and the minority from the bias of the majority. The majority still gets a say, the people are still represented, we still rule ourselves. However, we are protected. If the entire country suddenly says, we don't like Jeremy, let's bury him in a hole somewhere, the government will say, no, that's against the law. He has the same rights that everyone else does. We don't get to do that. So that is the purpose of the republic. It's a beautiful thing, and it works really well. It truly is one of a kind. So this country is not a democracy. So the very first word he uses, Bernie Sanders, this is the point I was getting to, the very first word he uses in his identity is democratic. So a lot of people think that means people rule themselves, freedom, blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't. Democracy doesn't necessarily mean freedom. There's been plenty of examples throughout history where the masses willingly sacrificed and even wanted to sacrifice their freedom. I mean, it's happened in America a few times. Right after 9/11, the Patriot Act is a good example of what happens when the people make a choice to give up certain liberties. Now, whether or not the Patriot Act was a good idea is a discussion for another time. But the word democratic in the first two words that he uses to describe himself, Bernie Sanders, just by itself is very off-putting to me because I understand what it means. And then socialist. Socialist is literally goes against everything that America stands for. You cannot have socialism and freedom in the same place. It doesn't work. You have to either pick one or the other. Now, to be fair, there are certain socialistic aspects that we can implement in America that work quite well. However, it comes with a sacrifice of certain freedoms. For example, when I go to the gas station and put gas in my car, money comes out of my pocket and goes into the hands of my government. And that money is then spent to build roads. Now, this is convenient for me, and I even like this idea. I'm not against it. I'm cool with just a taste of socialism, but just a touch. We have too much already. Let's just put it that way. So when I pay my road taxes, I do this with the knowledge that there's going to be roads for me to drive on, and I don't have to worry about going out there and building roads. And there's other things like Social Security, fire departments, police departments, our military, all of these things, but they all come with sacrifice. They don't come from nowhere. They don't come from nothing. The more communist we get, the more socialist we get, the less freedom we have, and it's that simple. It's a fine balance that we have to achieve. And I think that as modern society progresses and as technology progresses, there will come a time when we will be able to have more freedom and more commonality at the same time. But right now it's not possible. The technology doesn't exist. And so what this means is that Bernie Sanders says healthcare for all, free college for all. Do you know what that means? That means someone has to pay for it. Free college, free healthcare isn't free. There's no such thing as free anything. If you get something, it came from somewhere and someone paid for it. Freedom isn't free. You know what freedom cost this country? Millions and millions of lives. A lot of blood was spilled. There were plenty of people who volunteered, signed up to pay the price for freedom so that people like me and people like you wouldn't have to. And that is actually quite selfless and amazing of them to do that. But what he's talking about is the opposite of freedom. The idea of freedom is to maximize available choice, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. Equality of outcome does not work. There never will be equality of outcome. Even in communist Russia, in Soviet Russia, there was a ruling class. There were elites and there were poor people. Now, the truth is that in Soviet Russia, that divide was emphasized and highlighted. There was this big thing about communism, everyone's equal, comrades, right? That was the word they used. But the problem is that the people in control lived the high life. A few people, a few hundred people lived like kings, and the entire rest of the country was starving to death. So, what Bernie Sanders is talking about does not work. It has been proven time and time again, socialism is the opposite of freedom. You can have a few socialistic things if you are willing to sacrifice certain freedoms. I pay my taxes so that I can have certain benefits. And the truth is that if I didn't have to pay road tax and nobody built my roads for me, there would be more freedom for me because I would have more money, I would have a choice of what to do with that money, and I would be completely free to go build a damn road if I wanted to drive on it. But we've pretty much all agreed that it works to pay a little bit of taxes and have roads built and have police departments and have emergency services like the fire department, paramedic, rescue. You know, and these things are great. These things do a lot of good work. They do important work. And I'm not saying we should abolish these, but they don't come from nothing. They're not free. Someone pays for that. I pay for that. You pay for that. So what he's talking about is simply unachievable. And honestly, Bernie Sanders is not an idiot. I don't know why he's talking like this. I don't know really where he's getting these ideas. I'm 22. Even I can see what he's talking about is ridiculous. It won't work. It's not possible. It's been tried and it failed many times. Now he points at Canada. The truth is that there is some socialism in Canada that works fairly well, but there's a couple of things to note about Canada. First of all, it has a much smaller population than the United States. Second of all, Canada didn't come into being the way America did. Their culture and background is different than ours. They don't have the same ideals of freedom and Republican democracy that we do. And third, well, they were willing to give up a lot of freedoms to have these socialistic benefits, conveniences. The truth is, there's a lot of high taxes in Canada. People pay a lot. And there's also a lot less freedom. Look at their gun laws. Look at entertainment law. Look at drug law. The thing about Canada is that they have certain socialistic ideals and conveniences and systems in place that work fairly well for them. They wouldn't work here. Because no one in America who is an American wants to give up more freedom. Most of us, including me, already feel like that our freedom has been limited far too much, that we have lost a lot of what we had when this country started. So what Bernie's talking about is very off-putting. Just calling himself a democratic socialist, in my opinion, that lost him the election. Very off-putting and doesn't work for him very well. Okay, so enough about the Democratic debates. They were quite the clown show. We will move on from that. So, there has been some pretty tragic news across America this weekend. In the last 7 days, there has been 3 mass shootings in the United States, which is tragic and awful. The very first one happened a week ago today at Gilroy Garlic Festival in Gilroy, California. 11 people were injured and 3 people died. Second one, I believe the second one happened in El Paso, Texas, yesterday around 10:30 in the morning at a Walmart Supercenter at Celio Vista Mall in El Paso, Texas, and 20 people died, and I believe another 26 were injured. And the last shooting that happened this weekend happened in Dayton, Ohio. It happened at about 1 o'clock this morning. It happened somewhere near a nightclub or a bar in Dayton, Ohio, and it left 9 people dead. So, 26 people were injured, 9 people were killed in Dayton, Ohio. So, over the weekend, there were 33 people killed. Well, last week, there were 33 people killed in horrific acts of violence. Now, because of how horrible these acts are and the tragedy at hand, and out of respect for the families of the victims, I will not name the perpetrators of these crimes on my show. What they want is attention, and I, for one, won't give it to them. They shall remain nameless on my show. I won't even look into what they were trying to accomplish. So, America recently, in the last few years, has seen a rise in mass shootings in this country. And this year, in fact, the Dayton, Ohio shooting this morning was the 250th shooting, mass shooting, multiple victim shooting in the United States in 2019, which is horrible. So, my heart goes out to the families of these victims. There's really no words to describe how tragic it is to see this kind of thing happen in our country. There's going to be a lot of talk over the next few weeks in the governments, in the news media, about who's to blame. They're going to blame certain political figures, maybe Donald Trump. He's going to blame other people. There's going to be a lot of talk about gun control, like there always is. And then they're going to try to find ways to solve the problem that we have in America with gun violence. Because there's no doubt that we have a problem with mass shootings in America at this point. The number of shootings, multiple victim shootings in America has gone up a lot in the last few years. So, who's to blame for this? What's going on? I'm not even going to get into that right now. There's plenty of time for that later. I just want to say that to see 3 mass shootings in America in 1 week is a tragic day for our country. My heart goes out to the families of these victims. And it's because of them and my wish to respect them and honor them that I will not get into a discussion today about the causes or the reasons and the ways we could prevent this. There's time for that later. Right now, it's time for this country to grieve. Because I can tell you, this makes me sad. I really do believe that we're better than this. The United States, people of America are better than this. The few people that choose to commit horrible acts of violence do not represent the American people. They do not represent you, and they do not represent me. So again, my heart goes out to the families of these people that were lost over the week. I don't know them. I don't know any of them. But no one deserves that. So, in light of this, I would like to offer a challenge to all of my listeners. I challenge everyone who listens to this that from now on, every day, once a day, pick one person that you wouldn't normally even notice, that you might normally avoid, or someone that you disagree with or have a grudge against, and show them kindness. Show them an act of love. That's my challenge to you, America. Find the people around you that you would normally avoid and show them an act of kindness or an act of love. Because I can promise you, they're the ones that need it the most. And our country, our nation, our people, we desperately need to bring love back into this country. So, I'm going to move on from this subject now. I want to talk about something interesting that I've noticed in pop culture. And honestly, it fascinates me because one of my favorite genres in books, movies, video games is end of the world. Now, I'm not sure why this is. I don't know why we get so fascinated with the end of the world. I'm not sure why, but I think it's because of curiosity. And also, there's this tendency in people, especially me, to kind of gravitate towards our deepest fears, right? The most terrifying scenarios are the ones we like to imagine. We like to scare ourselves. There's a reason we watch horror movies. So, I don't know really when this started, but you didn't see a lot of apocalypse scenario fiction or pop culture until sometime in the 19th century, or it would have been the 20th century, really, when it became a thing. Of course, it was aggravated a lot by the ability of humans to literally wipe themselves out with the advent of the nuclear weapon. And so this kind of led to a lot of ideas, movies, books, games based around nuclear apocalypse. But I thought it was interesting how we get fascinated with this idea. But it's not just apocalypse, no. The idea of great challenges and then living through them. So surviving the apocalypse. Because obviously, I mean, we all imagine ourselves as the one that survives the apocalypse when we think about this stuff. You know, if the world is overrun with zombies tomorrow, I'm going to live through it. So it's fun to imagine. However, I do want to be very clear here. I don't want the world to end. I really don't want the world to end. I'm pretty happy with my life, and the simple fact of the matter is that any scenario where most life ends on Earth is horrible and devastating, and there's no reason to imagine or believe that I would be one of the lucky few that survived. So this isn't something we want, but it is kind of a fun thing to imagine and read about, and the games, the movies, the novels, the books, they're great. They're kind of a lot of fun. I enjoy them a lot. My favorite genre of, well, fiction is probably the post-apocalypse. But my other favorite genre is the survival horror sort of thing. And it's because of the rush, the scare, you know, it's exciting. So this is why it becomes such a pop culture thing. And a lot of these do kind of tend to take a look at, or attempt to take a look at what people do when they get pushed to their limits. When mentally, emotionally, and physically we are pushed far beyond what we're used to, how do we respond? How do we react? Stephen King was especially good at looking at this. He wrote a novel called The Mist, which was later made into a movie and then also later a Netflix TV show. And it took a deep look, or attempted to take a deep look at what humans do when pushed to the limits of emotion and mental stress, emotional stress, and physical stress. And so there is that aspect to it, and it's fascinating for sure. But and I just want to say, I swear to God, I'm not some crazy psychopath. I really don't want the world to end. I am honestly super happy with the way the world's going right now. There are obviously things that could be better, but in general, statistically speaking, and this is actually surprising to a lot of people, but if we take the number of people that die versus the number of population, so ratios, a percentage of population deaths, well, percentage of population that die, throughout history, it has never been lower than it is today. Not only has death never been less than it is today, compared to how many people there are, but war, violent crime, rape, hunger, sickness, disease, all of these things are at their lowest point in history. The world has actually never been more peaceful than it is right now. And it's only getting more so over long periods of time. Over short periods of time, you will have increases in violence in some places. You'll have isolated areas where violence breaks out and crime rates go up and bad things happen. But the truth is, we have come a long, long way. A long way. We are on a cosmic scale of time here. We're doing pretty good. We're on the right path. I have a lot of faith in humanity. I think people in general are good. That human nature, actually, you know what? I don't think, I know without a shadow of a doubt that human nature is, by its very nature, loving. It is loving, it is kind, and the opposite of any kind of evil or pain or harm that we would ever inflict on ourselves or anyone else. These things, violence, crime, death, hunger, disease, these awful things are the opposite of human nature. And a lot of people aren't aware of this because they pay attention to the news and they pay attention to the media and they don't pay attention to what's going on around them. They pay attention to what's going on elsewhere. They don't pay attention to right now, right here. And the truth is, if you go out into the world and you pay attention to right here, right now, almost everyone you meet is going to treat you well. You will run into a few people that might treat you in a way that doesn't work for you or that you don't deserve. It does happen. But you'll also notice that these people aren't happy. They're not in their natural state at all. Most of the people you meet, you go to Walmart, you go to a restaurant, you go to a bar, you go walk down the road. Most of the people you meet in this country and in this world will treat you with kindness and respect. So, a lot of people get the illusion that the world's dangerous, the world's evil. Not really. It has its bad moments. It has its areas that still need healing. But that's what we're here for. That's what the rest of us are here for. To be the change there. So, back to apocalypse stuff. One of my favorite genres. It's exciting. I love the thrill, the romantic aspect to it. It's a very romantic idea, right? One or two people all alone in a desolate world. You know, it's a pretty romantic idea. I love the romance of the idea. I love the thrill of the idea, the scare, the fear of it. You know, it's all there to kind of be this emotional high when you read these books and watch these TV shows. Although I just want to say, The Walking Dead, I am not a fan of The Walking Dead. That show is dark. My God. That is a fucked up I liked Game of Thrones more than I liked The Walking Dead. Zombie apocalypses don't need to be that dark. My word. All the good guys did horrible things in that show. Which, I mean, I get why they're doing this. I get why the writers went where they did with it, but still, not a fan. I honestly think that human nature is not that. Well, guys, it is time for Song of the Week. Guess we're only going to have one Song of the Week today because Wayne's not here, but I have been listening to a lot of old music that I used to listen to a long time ago. I've been kind of having a throwback week this week, and the song that I've listened to the most has been a song by a British metal band, speed metal band, the band's called Dragon Force. I think that a few of my listeners are probably aware of Dragon Force, but the song is called A Flame for Freedom. It's from the Alter Beatdown album, and technically I believe that this song is actually a metal ballad. It's so gorgeous. It's got a slow rhythm, kind of a slow beat, and a really gorgeous melody. So, yeah, A Flame for Freedom. Check it out.
Stars fall through blackened clouds and dream sadness reigns. A twilight star in a thousand lights for me. One dream in all of us still shining. One star, the everlasting light.
Oh man, song gives me the chills every time. Such a good song. You know, I had a weird thought while I was listening to that just now. If Metallica was about 20 years younger and British, they would be Dragon Force. Dragon Force is British Metallica. That's kind of what I feel like. Dragon Force actually named Metallica as one of their main sources of inspiration. So that's kind of neat. And they have a lot of good music. Dragon Force is really famous for a couple of things. One is really fast guitar, and the other is gorgeous, beautiful melodies in their music. And I will leave a link in the description for that song. As always, guys, it's been awesome doing this. I love doing this podcast. I love talking with people. I know Wayne wasn't here today, and he'll be here next weekend, so we'll be back to the good old-fashioned conversation between two people. But today it's just me, and I've kind of enjoyed this. I've had a good time with it. So till next time, thank you guys for tuning in, and I love y'all. See you next time.